Power attracts power, and the moment you truly understand that, your income can shift, your relationships can transform, and your life can begin rearranging itself in ways that feel almost supernatural. Right now, as you listen, something invisible is already moving around you, responding to you, mirroring you, echoing you, because you are not just a body in a world. You are a signal in a field, a frequency in a vast intelligent universe. And the law of attraction is not a theory, but a living principle responding to the emotional current flowing through your subconscious mind. And that realization can feel thrilling or unsettling, because it means the results you have today are not accidents, not punishments, not random strokes of luck. They are reflections, and if they are reflections, then they can be changed. Which brings us to something deeper than positive thinking, deeper than wishing, deeper even than desire. It brings us to visualization infused with feeling. Because the subconscious mind does not respond to words. It responds to images. It responds to emotion. It responds to what feels real. And every time you imagine a future filled with success, wealth, confidence, love, and you feel it as though it is happening now, your subconscious accepts it as truth. And what it accepts as truth, it begins to project outward into your physical experience. This is why two people can want the same goal, yet only one receives it. One imagines with doubt. The other imagines with certainty. One visualizes while secretly fearing failure. The other visualizes until their body believes the success has already happened. The subconscious does not argue. It obeys. And as it obeys, it alters your posture, your tone of voice, your decisions, your awareness of opportunities. Subtle shifts that look like coincidence to the outside world, but are actually the invisible architecture of manifestation being constructed from within. But here is the mystery most people miss. You are always visualizing. You are always imagining something. If you worry about bills, you are visualizing debt. If you replay arguments, you are visualizing conflict. If you anticipate rejection, you are visualizing failure. The law of attraction does not judge whether the image is good or bad. It simply matches it. So the real power begins the moment you take that automatic process off autopilot. The moment you decide that your inner cinema will no longer replay fear, it will premiere possibility. Close your eyes in your mind for a second. See the version of you who already has what you desire. Notice how they stand. Notice how they breathe. Notice how they move through a room. Now feel it. Not hope, not longing, but ownership. That feeling, that embodied certainty, is the magnetic charge. That is what impresses the subconscious. That is what alters your frequency. That is what begins drawing synchronized people, conversations, ideas, and chances into your path. Manifestation is not about forcing the universe. It is about becoming the version of yourself who naturally attracts what you want. And as you practice this, as you deliberately choose thoughts that empower, images that inspire, emotions that elevate, you will notice something subtle at first. You will feel different before anything changes. And then, almost quietly, the outer world will begin catching up to the inner one. A call, an idea, an opportunity, a shift in timing. A door that was closed but now opens effortlessly. Not magic, alignment. Because power attracts powers. And the greatest power you will ever attract is the one that has been waiting inside you all along. What if the force shaping your life has never been outside you, never hidden in circumstances, never locked inside luck or fate, but has been moving quietly within you this entire time, responding to you with flawless precision, mirroring your dominant emotions, echoing your most repeated thoughts, waiting for you to recognize it? And the moment you begin to sense that possibility, something shifts. Because if there truly is a power operating beneath the surface of events, then every success, every setback, every coincidence begins to look less random and more like reflection, less like chaos and more like choreography. And that realization can feel both empowering and intimidating. because it suggests that the source has always been closer than you imagined. So what is this power? It is not merely positive thinking, not wishful dreaming, not blind optimism. It is the law of attraction, the universal principle that like attracts like, that energy responds to energy, that your inner world is constantly communicating with the outer world through frequency, emotion, and belief, and it operates with the same certainty as gravity, impartial, consistent, unwavering. And as you sit with that idea, you begin to notice how often your mind drifts toward expectation, expecting delays, expecting opportunity, expecting rejection, expecting praise, and how those expectations carry emotion, and how those emotions shape your posture, your tone, your decisions. And suddenly you see that the subconscious mind has been recording everything, absorbing every repeated thought, accepting every emotionally charged image as instruction. Because the subconscious does not analyze truth the way the conscious mind does, it accepts what is impressed upon it through feeling, through repetition, through vivid visualization, and once accepted, it works tirelessly to express that blueprint in your behavior and perception, quietly filtering reality to match the program you have installed. And this is where manifestation stops being mystical and becomes deeply personal. Because if the subconscious mind is the soil, then your dominant thoughts are seeds, and your emotions are water, and whatever you nurture consistently must grow, whether it is confidence or doubt, abundance or scarcity, connection or isolation. Which means visualization is not fantasy. It is rehearsal. It is emotional conditioning. It is the deliberate act of stepping into the version of yourself who already embodies the outcome you desire, feeling the success before it arrives, breathing with certainty before proof appears, allowing your nervous system to experience the future as present reality. And when you visualize with intensity, with gratitude, with sensory richness, something profound happens. Your subconscious begins adjusting your identity, and identity is what determines action, and action is what shapes results. And suddenly manifestation is no longer about forcing the universe, but about aligning your internal state with the life you intend to live. Yet alignment requires awareness, because the mind has habits, and many of those habits were formed in moments of fear, disappointment, or limitation, and those old patterns replay automatically, projecting familiar outcomes unless interrupted by intention, unless replaced by conscious imagery that feels more powerful than past conditioning. And this is why persistence matters, because the law of attraction responds not to occasional hope, but to consistent frequency, not to fleeting desire, but to sustained emotional alignment. And the more you practice seeing yourself as capable, worthy, successful, the more natural it becomes, until one day your outer world begins reflecting that inner conviction in subtle but undeniable ways. It might begin as a shift in how people respond to you, a conversation that opens a door, an idea that feels inspired rather than forced, a coincidence that seems timed perfectly, and instead of calling it luck, you recognize it as resonance, as the echo of the signal you have been broadcasting from within. And as that awareness deepens, fear loses its authority, because you realize you are not waiting to be chosen by opportunity. You are becoming the version of yourself that opportunity recognizes, and that realization carries a quiet confidence, a grounded calm, a sense that you are no longer chasing life, but participating in its unfolding. And in that participation, in that steady alignment between imagination and emotion, between belief and action, you feel something subtle yet undeniable. Not a dramatic explosion of change, but a steady current, a guiding force, a silent partnership between your conscious intention and the deeper intelligence of your subconscious mind, moving you forward in ways that feel both deliberate and destined. And as that steady current begins to feel real within you, as you sense the quiet partnership between intention and subconscious intelligence, another layer reveals itself. Because beneath every thought you think, and every image you visualize, there is something even more influential shaping the response you receive from life, and that something is feeling. Feeling is not a side effect of thought. It is the amplifier, the signal strength, the frequency that carries your inner world outward into experience. And whether you notice it or not, you are always broadcasting a frequency through the emotions you dwell in most consistently, whether it is anticipation, gratitude, frustration, fear, enthusiasm, or doubt. And this is where the concept of feeling frequencies becomes more than poetic language. It becomes practical power, because emotions are not random sensations floating through you. They are energetic states that vibrate at distinct levels, and the law of attraction responds not to what you occasionally wish for, but to the emotional baseline you repeatedly embody. If you wake up already tense, already expecting pressure, already rehearsing what might go wrong, that tension becomes the lens through which you interpret the day, and through that lens you notice inconveniences more quickly than opportunities, criticism more sharply than praise, obstacles more clearly than openings, and without realizing it, you reinforce the very frequency that keeps similar experiences circulating back to you. And yet the opposite is equally true, because when you deliberately cultivate gratitude before evidence appears, when you choose appreciation in small moments, when you feel confidence before achievement is confirmed, you shift the baseline. And that shift is subtle but powerful, like tuning a radio dial away from static toward clarity, and suddenly different conversations, different reactions, different possibilities begin to enter your field. The subconscious mind responds instantly to feeling because feeling signals belief, and belief shapes identity, and identity determines the decisions you make without hesitation, the risks you dare to take, the boundaries you are willing to set, and the standards you silently accept. And over time, those micro-decisions accumulate into a life that looks dramatically different from the one you might have experienced had you remained on a lower frequency. And this is why simply thinking about success is never enough if beneath that thought lives anxiety or self-doubt. Because the dominant frequency will always override the surface statement, and the universe mirrors the vibration you sustain, not the words you recite. So the work becomes internal alignment, not forcing yourself into artificial positivity, not denying difficult emotions, but consciously elevating your state step by step, reaching for relief, reaching for appreciation, reaching for curiosity instead of fear, and allowing your nervous system to acclimate to higher emotional ground until it feels natural rather than forced. And as it begins to feel natural, you notice how differently you move through the same world, how you speak with more steadiness, how you interpret delays with patience rather than panic, how you see opportunity in what once felt like threat, and those shifts alter the feedback you receive from people and circumstances in ways that seem almost orchestrated. It is not that life suddenly becomes effortless. It is that your relationship to it transforms, and in that transformation your frequency stabilizes at a level where solutions reveal themselves more easily than problems, where inspiration arrives without strain, where synchronicities feel less like coincidence and more like confirmation. And as you continue living from that elevated state, feeling becomes your compass, guiding you toward thoughts that expand rather than contract you, toward actions that align rather than conflict with your vision. And in following that compass consistently, you begin to experience manifestation not as a rare event, but as an ongoing dialogue between your emotional frequency and the infinite field responding to it. And in that dialogue, in that rhythmic exchange between inner vibration and outer reflection, you sense something profound yet gentle, that your power has never been about control, but about resonance, about the quiet mastery of choosing how you feel, knowing that from that choice flows the architecture of everything you are becoming. And as you begin to understand resonance, as you feel the subtle mastery of choosing your emotional frequency, something even more expansive starts to unfold within you. The realization that feeling is not only influencing your experience, it is participating in creation itself. Because creation is not a distant event that happened once at the beginning of time. It is happening now, continuously, through you, through your awareness, through your focus, through the images you hold and the emotions you sustain. And when you truly grasp that, the law of attraction transforms from an abstract principle into a living collaboration between your inner world and the greater intelligence that animates all things. The power and creation are not separate forces. They are intertwined expressions of the same universal movement, and that movement responds to clarity, to belief, to emotionally charged intention, shaping circumstances around the blueprint you consistently project, whether that blueprint is conscious or unconscious. And this is where manifestation becomes deeply intentional. Because if you are always creating, always signaling, always imprinting the subconscious with impressions that ripple outward, then the question is no longer whether you are creating, but what you are creating and from which state of being it is emerging. The subconscious mind is the silent architect, translating emotional patterns into behavioral tendencies, into choices, into perceptions, and those choices ripple outward into opportunities accepted or ignored, conversations initiated or avoided, risks embraced or rejected, until eventually the outer structure of your life reflects the internal design you have been carrying. And what makes this process mysterious is not that it is unpredictable, but that it is subtle, operating beneath awareness until awareness chooses to participate. And once you begin participating consciously, you realize that imagination is not escape, it is initiation. When you visualize with intensity, when you see yourself succeeding, thriving, embodying the identity you desire, you are not merely entertaining possibility. You are instructing the subconscious to align your internal framework with that vision. And because the subconscious cannot distinguish vividly imagined experience from physical reality, it begins adjusting your physiology, your confidence, your readiness as though the outcome has already begun. And from that adjusted state, you act differently without forcing yourself to act differently. You speak differently without rehearsing lines. You recognize opportunities that once would have gone unnoticed, and people respond to you with a shift in tone that mirrors the shift within you. Creation, then, is not a dramatic explosion of miracles, but a sequence of aligned movements that feel natural because they are emerging from congruence, from coherence between what you imagine and what you feel, between what you believe and how you behave. Yet coherence requires consistency, because the universe responds to dominant patterns, not fleeting impulses. And so the creative process becomes a daily practice of returning to your vision, of feeling it fully, of embodying it before it materializes, of refusing to let temporary circumstances dictate your internal state. And when challenges arise, as they inevitably will, they are no longer evidence that creation has failed, but invitations to refine alignment, to strengthen belief, to choose faith over fear in the precise moment when fear would be easiest. Because in that moment, when the external world appears unchanged but your inner conviction remains steady, you are generating the most potent creative force of all, unwavering identity. And identity shapes destiny far more reliably than sporadic motivation ever could. And as you continue embodying that identity, something extraordinary happens. Your desires begin to evolve, expanding beyond survival or validation into contribution, into impact, into experiences that feel meaningful rather than merely impressive. And this evolution itself is a form of creation, a reflection of the higher frequency you have sustained. You begin to sense that the universe is not resisting you. It is responding, calibrating, arranging, and that what once felt like delay may have been preparation, what once felt like rejection may have been redirection, and what once felt like limitation may have been refinement of clarity. And within that understanding, Creation becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about aligning with possibility, less about forcing timelines and more about sustaining trust, less about demanding proof and more about becoming proof through your presence, your certainty, your emotional steadiness. And so you continue, not with frantic urgency, but with grounded intention, seeing clearly what you desire, feeling it deeply before it arrives, allowing your subconscious to absorb it as inevitable, and letting the law of attraction orchestrate the pathways through people, circumstances, and inspired ideas that converge at precisely the right moment. And in that convergence, in that quiet unfolding where inner vision meets outer reality, you recognize that the creative power has never been separate from you. It has been flowing through you all along, waiting for your awareness, waiting for your willingness to participate consciously, waiting for you to claim the role you have always held as both the dreamer and the designer of your life. As you begin to recognize yourself as both the dreamer and the designer of your life, something even more intimate becomes clear. Creation is not merely influenced by feeling, it is driven by it, shaped by it, born from it. Because before anything exists in your outer world, it first exists as an emotional state within you, as a vibration carried quietly in your nervous system, as a mood you return to again and again, and that mood becomes the mold into which your experiences are poured. Feeling is not a reaction to creation. Feeling is creation in motion. When you wake up and immediately feel pressure, your body tightens, your thoughts narrow, your expectations shrink, and through that contraction you unknowingly begin sculpting a day that mirrors that internal tension. Yet when you wake up and deliberately reach for appreciation, even something small, even something simple, your chest opens, your breath deepens, your perception widens, and through that openness you begin shaping a day that carries that same spacious energy. It seems subtle at first, almost too simple to matter, but the subconscious mind does not measure importance the way the conscious mind does. It measures intensity and repetition. The feelings you rehearse most often become your default frequency, and your default frequency becomes your creative signature. And this is why two people can stand in the same room, face the same opportunity, hear the same words, yet walk away with completely different outcomes, because one feels worthy and the other feels doubtful. One feels capable and the other feels hesitant, and the universe responds not to the surface event, but to the emotional state interpreting it. Your subconscious mind is always listening, always absorbing, always asking one silent question: what is true for you? And whatever feeling you dwell in consistently becomes its answer. If you feel unprepared, it prepares you for struggle. If you feel confident, it prepares you for success. If you feel overlooked, it prepares you for invisibility. If you feel valuable, it prepares you for recognition. And the preparation is invisible until it becomes visible. It shows up in how long you hold eye contact, in how clearly you speak your ideas, in whether you follow through or withdraw, in whether you see possibility or obstacle. And these micro-expressions accumulate until the outer world reflects the inner conviction so precisely that it feels almost mystical. Yet there is nothing mystical about alignment. It is simply the natural law of resonance. What you feel most deeply is what you become most magnetized to. And so the practice shifts from forcing outcomes to cultivating states. Instead of asking, how do I make this happen? You begin asking, who do I need to feel like to naturally attract this? Instead of chasing success, you embody certainty. Instead of pleading for abundance, you rehearse gratitude. Instead of fearing rejection, you cultivate self-trust. And as you rehearse these elevated states, something powerful happens in your subconscious. It begins to accept them as normal. What once felt like pretending begins to feel like remembering. What once felt distant begins to feel inevitable. And when something feels inevitable, your behavior aligns without strain. This is why visualization alone is incomplete without emotion. Seeing the future is helpful, but feeling it is transformative. When you visualize the promotion, feel the pride in your chest. When you imagine financial freedom, feel the relief in your shoulders. When you see yourself in a loving relationship, feel the warmth in your heart. That sensation is the creative spark. That sensation is the instruction to the subconscious. Because the subconscious does not create from logic, it creates from identity, and identity is forged in feeling. The more often you feel like the person who already has what you desire, the less foreign that reality becomes, and the less foreign it feels, the less resistance you unconsciously generate against it. And resistance is simply a conflicting feeling, a split signal between what you say you want and what you emotionally believe. When you dissolve that conflict by consistently feeling aligned with your desire, the signal becomes coherent, and coherence amplifies creation. You begin to notice that life feels less chaotic and more responsive. Challenges no longer feel like proof of limitation, but like invitations to strengthen alignment. Delays no longer feel like denial, but like refinement of timing. Even setbacks carry information rather than defeat. And in that steady emotional alignment, you feel different long before circumstances fully shift. You feel calmer, clearer, more certain, even in the absence of evidence. And that calm certainty is the deepest form of creative power, because it means your inner world is no longer negotiating with fear. From that place, manifestation feels less like a dramatic event and more like a natural unfolding, like a seed quietly breaking through soil after you have tended it with consistent belief. You do not pull at it to make it grow. You trust that what you have felt deeply enough must eventually take form. And as you continue choosing elevated feelings, not perfectly, not without human moments of doubt, but consistently enough to shift your baseline, you begin to sense something extraordinary yet peaceful, that your emotional state is not just influencing your life, it is authoring it, moment by moment, breath by breath, shaping the story you are living into the story you are becoming. And as you begin to feel that quiet certainty, that steady awareness that your emotional state is authoring your reality, another realization begins to rise gently within you, almost like dawn breaking across a horizon you did not know you were watching. Life is not something you chase. Life follows you. It follows the identity you embody. It follows the expectations you rehearse. It follows the emotional atmosphere you carry into every room, every conversation, every decision. And the moment you truly understand that life follows you, the sense of pressure begins to dissolve, because you are no longer trying to outrun circumstances or force opportunities into existence. You are becoming the gravitational center that circumstances and opportunities orbit around. This is why two people can walk into the same meeting, yet one leaves energized and the other discouraged, because one carried confidence into the room and the other carried doubt, and the room simply responded accordingly. The world is not fixed. It is responsive. It mirrors the emotional posture you bring to it. And as this awareness deepens, you begin to notice something almost poetic in its simplicity. Wherever you go, your internal world goes first. Before your words are spoken, your energy has already entered the space. Before you take action, your subconscious has already signaled your expectation. Before results appear, your frequency has already prepared the stage. Life follows that signal. If you consistently feel overlooked, life will provide moments that reinforce invisibility. If you consistently feel capable, life will present scenarios that require capability. If you feel unworthy of success, you may sabotage opportunities without even realizing it. If you feel deserving of growth, you will lean forward when others hesitate. And what makes this so powerful is that it means you are never at the mercy of external timing. You are in a constant relationship with it. Your beliefs about money, about love, about success, about health are not passive opinions. They are instructions, and life follows those instructions with remarkable precision. which is why changing your circumstances without changing your internal state often feels temporary. You might receive the opportunity, the relationship, the financial breakthrough, but if your underlying feeling remains misaligned, you will unconsciously recreate familiar patterns because life continues following the dominant signal rather than the temporary event. But when you shift the signal, when you truly embody abundance rather than merely desire it, when you genuinely feel secure rather than merely hope for security, when you carry certainty rather than perform confidence, life reorganizes itself around that embodiment. You begin to see it in small ways first: a stranger's unexpected kindness, a conversation that opens a door, an idea that arrives at exactly the right moment. And these moments feel synchronistic, almost cinematic, as though the universe is leaning in closer to meet you halfway. And perhaps it always has been. Because the law of attraction is not something you turn on or off. It is always active, always responding, always arranging. The difference now is that you are no longer unaware of the signal you are sending. You are no longer living on emotional autopilot. You are choosing. And in choosing, you feel a new kind of responsibility. Not heavy, not burdensome, but empowering. You realize that complaining is creative, that gratitude is creative, that resentment is creative, that joy is creative. Every feeling is a brushstroke on the canvas of your experience. So you become more intentional, not perfect, but aware. When doubt surfaces, you notice it rather than drown in it. When fear appears, you question it rather than obey it. When inspiration sparks, you follow it rather than dismiss it. And as you consistently return to elevated states, appreciation, confidence, trust, life begins to move in a rhythm that feels aligned rather than accidental. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this responding to within me?" That single shift changes everything. Because now you are not reacting to life. You are influencing it. You are not chasing validation. You are embodying value. You are not waiting for proof. You are becoming proof. And in that becoming, something beautiful happens. Pressure fades into presence. The urgency to force outcomes softens into trust. You still take action. You still pursue goals. You still refine your vision. But you do so from alignment rather than desperation. Life follows that calm certainty. It follows the version of you who believes before seeing. It follows the person who feels abundance before counting it. It follows the individual who radiates self-worth before receiving applause. And as it follows you, step by step, opportunity by opportunity, reflection by reflection, you begin to sense that you are not walking alone through circumstances. You are leading them. You are moving forward not as someone hoping to be chosen by success, but as someone who understands that success, love, abundance, and fulfillment are drawn to the frequency you sustain. And in that quiet understanding, you feel steady, grounded, aware, knowing that wherever you go next, whatever you build, whatever you envision, life will continue doing what it has always done. It will follow you. And as you stand in that awareness, knowing that life follows the frequency you sustain, you begin to sense that this understanding is not random insight, but access to something ancient and precise, something that has always been available, yet rarely mastered. And within that access lie the quiet keys to power. Not power over others, not control over every unfolding detail, but power over your internal state, which in turn influences every unfolding detail. And the first key reveals itself in awareness. The willingness to observe your thoughts without immediately becoming them, to notice your emotional reactions without letting them define you, to pause long enough to choose rather than react. Because in that pause, you interrupt unconscious patterns, and when you interrupt a pattern, you loosen the grip of the subconscious script that has been running quietly in the background, shaping outcomes without your permission, and that interruption alone is a profound act of creation. And as awareness strengthens, the second key begins to turn. Intentional visualization, not as idle daydreaming, but as deliberate rehearsal, as mental cinema where you see yourself stepping into rooms with certainty, handling challenges with calm authority, receiving opportunities with grounded gratitude. And as you replay these scenes with emotional intensity, the subconscious begins to accept them as familiar territory rather than distant fantasy. Familiarity dissolves fear. When success feels familiar, you no longer shrink in its presence. When abundance feels familiar, you no longer question your right to hold it. When confidence feels familiar, you no longer search for external validation to justify it. And this familiarity is cultivated through repetition, through consistent visualization infused with feeling, through returning again and again to the inner movie until it feels less like imagination and more like memory. And as memory and imagination blend, belief strengthens, and belief is the third key, the quiet conviction that what you are embodying internally must eventually reflect externally, even if the timeline remains unseen, even if the evidence has not yet rearranged itself in visible form. Belief stabilizes emotion. Without belief, feelings fluctuate wildly with circumstances. With belief, feelings remain anchored despite circumstances. And that anchoring is what allows you to move forward with inspired action rather than frantic effort. Because action is another key, though not the kind driven by desperation. It is action that feels aligned, ideas that arise naturally from your elevated state, conversations initiated because something within you feels ready, opportunities pursued because they resonate rather than because they impress. Aligned action is powerful because it carries coherence. Your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are no longer contradicting one another. You are not saying you desire abundance while emotionally rehearsing scarcity. You are not visualizing confidence while physically shrinking in doubt. Instead, you are integrating, becoming congruent, and that congruence amplifies your signal. And as your signal amplifies, resistance weakens. Resistance often hides in subtle forms: impatience, comparison, self-criticism, the need to control timing. And each of these lowers your frequency in small but significant ways. So another key emerges: release. The willingness to let go of rigid expectations about how and when your desires must arrive. The willingness to trust that the orchestration is larger than your current perspective. Trust is not passive, it is powerful composure. When you trust, your nervous system relaxes. When your nervous system relaxes, your perception widens. When your perception widens, you see opportunities you previously overlooked. And so what feels like surrender is actually strategic alignment. Gratitude then becomes another key, not as a forced ritual, but as a stabilizer of frequency. Gratitude signals to the subconscious that you already live in sufficiency, and sufficiency magnetizes more to appreciate. When you feel thankful before receiving, you step into the emotional state of already having, and life follows that state. And as these keys begin working together, awareness, visualization, belief, aligned action, release, gratitude, something extraordinary yet calm settles within you. You no longer feel like someone chasing power. You feel like someone inhabiting it. Your presence changes. You speak with clarity because your mind is less cluttered by doubt. You decide with confidence because your identity feels stable. You respond to setbacks with curiosity because you trust your trajectory. And others sense this shift, even if they cannot name it. Because true power is not loud. It is steady. It is composed. It does not demand attention. It attracts it. It does not beg for opportunity. It recognizes it. It does not collapse under pressure. It adapts within it. And as you continue practicing these keys, day after day, not perfectly but persistently, you begin to feel an internal expansion that is difficult to articulate yet impossible to deny. You feel less like a participant in random events and more like a co-creator in a responsive universe. The subconscious becomes an ally rather than a saboteur. Visualization becomes rehearsal rather than escape. Emotion becomes guidance rather than chaos. The law of attraction becomes less mystical theory and more lived experience. And within that lived experience, you sense a profound calm, the kind that comes not from having everything already manifested, but from knowing that what you consistently embody must eventually crystallize into form. So you continue walking forward, carrying these keys not as tools you occasionally use, but as states you consistently inhabit, aware that every thought chosen, every feeling cultivated, every action aligned is another quiet turn in the lock of your potential. And in that steady turning, without rush and without fear, you feel something deeply empowering and beautifully simple. The realization that the power you once searched for was never outside of you, but waiting patiently for you to claim it from within. And as you begin to truly claim that power from within, to feel it not as theory but as presence, your attention naturally turns toward one of the most emotionally charged arenas of human experience. Money, because money, more than almost anything else, reveals the hidden patterns of belief, the quiet fears, the inherited narratives, and the frequency you have been carrying without even realizing it. And the moment you bring awareness to money through the lens of creation, you begin to see that it has never been just currency. It has been energy, exchange, reflection, a mirror responding to how you feel about worth, value, security, and possibility. If deep within you there is tension when you think about money, if there is anxiety at the thought of bills, guilt at the thought of wealth, doubt at the thought of earning more, that tension becomes the frequency you broadcast, and life responds not to your desire for abundance, but to your emotional relationship with it. Because the subconscious does not respond to what you say you want, it responds to what you feel you deserve. And this is where the inner work becomes transformative. When you visualize financial freedom but secretly believe money is scarce, you send conflicting signals. When you affirm prosperity but feel unworthy of it, the resistance slows the flow. When you admire wealth but judge it at the same time, your energy fragments. But when you begin to heal your perception of money, when you see it not as something to fear or idolize, but as a neutral tool that amplifies intention, your frequency shifts. You stop chasing money from desperation and begin attracting it through alignment. Alignment with value. Because money flows toward value, and value is not just what you do, it is who you are being. When you cultivate confidence, clarity, creativity, and contribution, you naturally increase the value you bring into every interaction. And as your value rises, so does your capacity to receive. Yet receiving requires openness, and openness requires releasing the subconscious scripts you absorbed long ago. Phrases like, money is hard to make, rich people are greedy, there's never enough, quietly shaping your expectations. These scripts operate beneath awareness until you question them, until you consciously choose new beliefs that align with expansion rather than limitation. And as you replace scarcity with sufficiency, fear with trust, guilt with gratitude, you begin to notice subtle changes. Opportunities feel less intimidating. Investments in yourself feel justified rather than reckless. Negotiations feel empowering rather than uncomfortable. Because your identity is shifting, you are no longer identifying as someone trying to survive financially. You are identifying as someone capable of creating, managing, and multiplying resources. An identity drives behavior in ways willpower never could. When you feel abundant internally, you make decisions from abundance. You pursue ideas that align with growth. You collaborate rather than compete from insecurity. You speak about your services or skills with certainty rather than apology. And people respond to that certainty. Money is drawn to confidence the way opportunity is drawn to clarity. And as you continue visualizing not just the numbers in your bank account, but the feeling of financial ease, the relaxed shoulders, the steady breath, the freedom to choose, your subconscious begins aligning your actions with that state. You may learn new skills, explore new ventures, refine your craft, or expand your network, not from panic, but from inspiration. Inspired action carries a different frequency than fear-driven effort. It is lighter, more creative, more sustainable. It attracts collaborators instead of competitors. It opens doors that force cannot. And even when challenges arise, unexpected expenses, temporary setbacks, fluctuating income, you respond differently. Instead of collapsing into old scarcity narratives, you return to alignment. You remind yourself that money is responsive energy. You recalibrate your belief. You visualize solutions rather than catastrophes. That steadiness keeps your signal coherent. Because abundance is not only about accumulation, it is about circulation. The more comfortably you allow money to flow in and out without emotional turbulence, the more natural its movement becomes. Gratitude amplifies what you receive. Generosity expands what you circulate. Responsibility stabilizes what you maintain. And through this evolving relationship, money becomes less of a source of stress and more of a reflection of alignment. It becomes evidence of value exchanged, of confidence embodied, of vision acted upon. You begin to see that wealth is not merely financial. It is energetic. It is the richness of ideas, of connections, of courage, of self-belief. And as that internal wealth expands, the external wealth finds it easier to follow. Because life still follows you. It follows your beliefs about what is possible. It follows your comfort level with receiving. It follows the emotional atmosphere you maintain around earning and spending. And as you continue embodying sufficiency, as you consistently feel worthy, capable, creative, and grateful, you sense a quiet transformation taking place. Money no longer feels like something you must chase or control. It feels like something that moves in response to the frequency you sustain. And in that understanding, there is calm. You still set goals. You still take action. You still refine your strategy. But beneath it all, there is trust. Trust that the same creative power shaping your experiences shapes your financial reality as well. So you walk forward with vision in your mind and stability in your heart, knowing that as long as you remain aligned with value, clarity, gratitude, and belief, the energy of money will continue doing what all energy does in a responsive universe. It will move toward the signal you send. And as you grow more comfortable with the flow of value and money responding to your inner alignment, your awareness naturally expands into another powerful mirror of your frequency, relationships. Because if money reflects how you feel about worth and exchange, relationships reflect how you feel about love, safety, vulnerability, and belonging. What you attract in partnership, friendship, collaboration, even casual encounters, is rarely random. It is resonance. It is the subconscious seeking familiar emotional patterns, whether those patterns elevate you or quietly repeat what you have always known. If you carry unhealed rejection, you may unconsciously gravitate toward those who withhold. If you feel unworthy of deep connection, you may settle for inconsistency. If you fear abandonment, you may cling or test love until it fractures. And then, when the fracture happens, it can feel like fate, when in truth it was frequency meeting frequency. But the moment you recognize this, something shifts. Instead of asking, why does this keep happening to me? You begin asking, what emotional identity am I bringing into this dynamic? And that question alone opens the door to profound transformation. Because relationships are not just about compatibility, they are about self-concept. The subconscious mind will always seek what feels familiar before it seeks what feels healthy. So if chaos feels familiar, calm can feel boring. If criticism feels familiar, kindness can feel suspicious. If inconsistency feels familiar, stability can feel unnatural. Which means that elevating your relationships begins with elevating your internal state. When you visualize a loving, respectful partnership, you do not only imagine the other person, you imagine yourself within it. You see yourself communicating clearly, You feel yourself setting boundaries with confidence. You sense yourself receiving affection without deflection. That feeling becomes the new baseline your subconscious starts to normalize. And as it normalizes, your behavior shifts subtly but powerfully. You stop tolerating what contradicts your value. You stop shrinking to maintain approval. You stop overgiving to earn validation. Instead, you stand grounded in self-respect, and that grounded energy alters who feels comfortable approaching you. Because just as life follows your frequency, so do people. Confidence attracts respect. Self-love attracts healthier love. Emotional stability attracts emotional stability. This does not mean conflict disappears, but it does mean conflict is handled differently. You respond rather than react. You listen rather than defend. You express rather than suppress. And perhaps most importantly, you no longer seek someone else to complete an emptiness you have not addressed within yourself. That shift alone changes everything. When you feel whole, you choose from desire rather than need. When you feel secure, you connect from openness rather than fear. When you feel valuable, you expect reciprocity rather than chasing attention. And these expectations are not spoken demands. They are energetic standards. Standards shape experience. If your standard is inconsistency, you will rationalize it. If your standard is honesty, you will require it. If your standard is growth, you will encourage it. And those standards originate not from ego, but from identity. So you begin cultivating internally what you wish to experience externally. You practice empathy with yourself so you can offer it genuinely to others. You develop patience with your own growth so you can extend it within partnership. You nurture your own dreams so you do not resent someone else's success. In doing so, relationships stop being battlegrounds for unmet needs and start becoming arenas for mutual expansion. And even when endings occur, as some inevitably will, you approach them differently. Instead of collapsing into rejection, you reflect on alignment. Instead of internalizing loss as inadequacy, you see it as redirection. You understand that not every connection is meant to remain, but every connection reveals something about your frequency at the time it was formed. That awareness keeps you evolving. Because each time you choose self-respect over fear, clarity over confusion, vulnerability over avoidance, you strengthen your emotional baseline. And as your baseline rises, the relationships you attract begin reflecting that elevation. Conversations become deeper. Support becomes mutual. Trust becomes easier. Laughter feels lighter. Silence feels safe rather than tense. And in that environment, love feels less like a gamble and more like a natural extension of who you have become. The law of attraction does not just bring people into your life. It brings reflections. Reflections of your wounds, your strengths, your insecurities, your growth. When you embrace that truth, you stop blaming circumstances and start refining alignment. You realize that the most magnetic quality you can cultivate is authenticity, the courage to be fully yourself without distortion. Because authenticity carries coherence, and coherence is irresistible to those operating at a similar frequency. And so you continue the inner work, not because you are flawed, but because you are powerful. You refine your beliefs about love. You visualize harmonious connection. You feel worthy of devotion and capable of giving it. And as you embody that worthiness, you notice something beautiful and grounding. Relationships no longer feel like unpredictable storms. They feel like shared journeys, chosen consciously, built intentionally, sustained through alignment rather than dependency. You are no longer seeking someone to rescue you. You are walking beside those who resonate with you. And in that steady companionship, whether romantic, platonic, or collaborative, you feel the quiet confirmation that the same creative force shaping your wealth and your opportunities is shaping your connections as well. It is responding to who you are being. And as you continue becoming more aligned, more self-aware, more emotionally grounded, the relationships that surround you begin to mirror that inner harmony, reflecting back not who you once were, but who you have chosen to become. In the quiet harmony of aligned relationships, where connection begins to feel like resonance instead of resistance, another realization gently rises into awareness. The body has been listening this entire time, not only to your words, not only to your conscious intentions, but to the emotional atmosphere you have carried for years. Because health is not separate from frequency, it is one of its most intimate reflections. Every thought generates chemistry. Every sustained emotion releases signals through your nervous system, your hormones, your breath, your posture. Stress tightens muscles and shortens breathing. Gratitude softens the body and regulates the heart. Fear accelerates rhythm. Peace restores it. The subconscious mind does not just influence opportunity and relationships, it influences physiology. It translates belief into biology. When you repeatedly rehearse anxiety, your body learns vigilance. When you constantly expect the worst, your system remains on alert. When you carry resentment, tension finds a home in your muscles. Over time, the body adapts to the emotional baseline you maintain, and what began as a thought becomes a physical pattern. Yet the reverse is equally powerful. When you begin visualizing vitality, when you see yourself moving freely, breathing deeply, feeling strong and energized, the subconscious begins adjusting internal responses accordingly. The body responds to imagery almost as vividly as it responds to lived experience. Athletes have known this for decades. Mental rehearsal improves performance because the brain fires similar neural pathways whether action is physical or imagined. So imagine what happens when you consistently visualize wellness with emotional intensity. Imagine feeling your cells vibrant, your heart steady, your energy balanced. Imagine gratitude for your body before it reaches the ideal you desire. That gratitude shifts chemistry. It relaxes resistance. It communicates safety. And safety is the foundation of healing. Stress is contraction. Healing is expansion. When you live in chronic stress, worrying about symptoms, fearing diagnoses, anticipating decline, the body interprets that fear as threat. Resources divert to survival rather than restoration. But when you cultivate calm trust, when you believe in your body's intelligence, when you feel appreciation for its constant effort to sustain you, the nervous system shifts into repair mode. This is not about denying medical science or pretending challenges do not exist. It is about recognizing that the mind and body are not separate systems. They are continuous conversation, and your role in that conversation matters. The words you speak about your health, the images you hold about aging, the emotions you attach to your physical state, they all become instructions. If you constantly identify as tired, your body will adapt to that identity. If you identify as resilient, your physiology begins aligning with resilience. Identity once again shapes outcome. So you begin to refine your inner dialogue. Instead of saying my body is failing me, you say my body is communicating with me. Instead of fearing every sensation, you approach it with curiosity. Instead of criticizing perceived flaws, you express appreciation for function. Appreciation generates cooperation, and cooperation between mind and body creates momentum toward vitality. You start making choices from self-respect rather than punishment. You move your body not to fix it, but to celebrate it. You nourish it not from guilt, but from gratitude. These subtle emotional shifts transform habits into aligned action. Even rest becomes sacred instead of lazy. Sleep improves when the mind quiets. Digestion improves when stress decreases. Immunity strengthens when belief supports healing. The subconscious influences these processes quietly, consistently, responding to your dominant emotional state. The law of attraction applies here as well. You attract experiences that align with how you perceive your physical self. If you see your body as fragile, you move cautiously. If you see it as adaptable, you challenge it wisely. If you see it as an ally, you treat it with partnership rather than frustration. And over time, that partnership deepens. You begin listening more closely. You notice subtle signals before they become loud ones. You honor fatigue rather than override it. You embrace movement as medicine. You choose environments that uplift your energy rather than drain it. Health stops being a distant goal and becomes a daily relationship. There will still be seasons of discomfort, moments of imbalance, periods of uncertainty, but your response changes everything. Instead of spiraling into fear, you return to alignment. You visualize recovery. You feel trust. You combine practical care with emotional steadiness. That steadiness reduces internal conflict, because conflict within the mind often manifests as tension within the body. But coherence, when thought, belief, and emotion align, creates flow. Blood flows, breath flows, energy flows. And where there is flow, there is life. You start to sense your body not as an obstacle to manage, but as a powerful instrument responding to your internal conductor. The more calm, gratitude, and belief you embody, the more harmonious the music becomes. And in that harmony, something profoundly grounding settles in. You are not separate from the creative force you have been learning to master. It lives in your cells, in your heartbeat, in your breath. The same intelligence shaping your opportunities and relationships pulses through your physical form. When you respect it, it responds. When you trust it, it strengthens. When you align with it, it supports you. So you move forward not in fear of decline, but in partnership with vitality. You visualize strength. You feel gratitude. You choose thoughts that promote expansion. And in that quiet, steady alignment between mind and body, you feel a deeper sense of wholeness, a realization that the power you cultivate within does not just shape your world around you, but sustains the living system that carries you through it, breath by breath, moment by moment, in quiet cooperation with your belief. Within that quiet cooperation between mind and body, where breath feels intentional and awareness feels grounded, something even deeper begins to surface. A realization that all of this power, every principle, every shift in frequency, every act of visualization has always been pointing to one place. You, not the version shaped by fear, not the identity constructed from past disappointments, not the personality molded by other people's expectations, but the core awareness beneath all of it, the observer, the chooser, the one directing attention and therefore directing energy. The law of attraction has never been outside of you. It has never been a force you beg or convince. It responds to who you are being. And who you are being is determined by what you repeatedly think, feel, believe, and embody. So when you say you want success, the deeper question becomes, who are you in relation to success? When you say you desire love, the deeper inquiry becomes, who are you when love arrives? When you say you want abundance, the deeper truth becomes, do you feel like someone who naturally holds abundance? Because the universe does not respond to your wishes. It responds to your identity. Identity is the most powerful creative act available to you. It is the lens shaping perception, the filter interpreting events, the magnet attracting aligned experiences. Change the identity, and you change the trajectory. Yet identity is not fixed. It is rehearsed. Every time you visualize a future version of yourself handling challenges with calm authority, you are rehearsing identity. Every time you feel gratitude before evidence appears, you are rehearsing identity. Every time you choose self-trust over self-doubt, you are rehearsing identity. And with repetition, rehearsal becomes reality. The subconscious mind absorbs what you consistently embody and begins organizing your behavior around it. You speak differently. You stand differently. You decide differently. The world responds to those subtle shifts in ways that feel almost magical, yet they are deeply lawful. Because the power is not mystical in the sense of randomness. It is mystical in the sense of depth. It operates beneath the surface of ordinary awareness, shaping outcomes through patterns most people never question. But you have questioned them. You have explored how feeling becomes frequency, how frequency becomes attraction, how attraction becomes experience. You have recognized that money mirrors value, that relationships mirror self-concept, that health mirrors emotional baseline. And now, standing here in this awareness, the mirror turns fully toward you. Who are you choosing to be? Not someday, not when circumstances improve, not when validation arrives. Now, because the moment you decide who you are and begin aligning thought, emotion, and action with that decision, the creative process accelerates. Clarity sharpens. Doubt softens. Momentum builds quietly but steadily. You begin to trust your intuition more. You feel guided rather than lost. You notice synchronicities not as coincidences, but as confirmations. Your life starts to feel less like something happening to you, and more like something unfolding through you. This is personal power in its purest form. Not dominance, not control, but alignment. Alignment between the conscious mind and the subconscious blueprint. Alignment between desire and belief. Alignment between imagination and embodiment. And when alignment stabilizes, effort decreases. You are no longer forcing change. You are allowing expression. You are no longer chasing outcomes. You are becoming the source from which they emerge. There is a quiet confidence that grows here. Not arrogance, not performance, a grounded knowing. You understand that setbacks are adjustments, not verdicts. You recognize that delays are timing refinements, not denial. You see that every experience offers feedback about your internal state. So you refine gently. You recalibrate without self-judgment. You return to gratitude when fear arises. You revisit visualization when clarity fades. You breathe when urgency tries to take over. And through this steady practice, you feel something remarkable, a deep sense of authorship. Your life is no longer a reaction to past conditioning. It is a conscious expression of present intention. The power, and you are not separate. The creative force you once perceived as external is woven into your awareness, your breath, your ability to choose the next thought. Even now, as you listen, you are choosing what to believe. You are choosing what identity to step into next. You are choosing which emotional baseline to cultivate. And that choice is where everything begins. There may still be uncertainty ahead. There may still be growth required, fears to dissolve, habits to refine. But beneath all of that, there is a steady foundation, the understanding that you are not powerless within your circumstances. You are participatory. You are influential. You are creative. And as that understanding settles into something more than inspiration, something embodied in calm, you feel less pressure to prove and more desire to align. You feel less need to chase and more readiness to attract. You feel less fragmented and more whole. Because the power was never hidden. It was waiting for recognition. And now that you recognize it, not as theory but as lived awareness, you stand differently within your own life, steady, intentional, quietly confident, knowing that whatever unfolds next will respond to the frequency you sustain and the identity you choose to embody. And in that steady knowing, there is peace. From that quiet peace where you recognize the power within yourself, where identity became choice and choice became creation, the awareness expands outward once more, not away from you, but through you. And suddenly life itself feels less like a random series of events and more like a living canvas responding to your inner brushstrokes. Because life has never been happening in isolation from your energy. Every sunrise you witness, every opportunity that appears, every challenge that tests you, every unexpected turn, all of it interacts with the frequency you carry. Life is not separate from the power. It is the stage upon which that power expresses itself. When you once saw life as unpredictable, you felt small within it. When you once believed circumstances dictated your worth, you felt reactive. But now something steadier moves through you. You understand that while you may not control every external event, you influence the meaning, the response, and the direction that follows. And meaning shapes momentum. If life presents delay and you interpret it as rejection, contraction follows. If life presents delay and you interpret it as preparation, expansion follows. The event may be identical, yet the outcome diverges based on perception. That perception is formed by belief, and belief is programmed within the subconscious mind. So life becomes a mirror once again. Not a harsh mirror designed to judge you, but a reflective surface offering feedback. When frustration repeats, it asks you to examine expectation. When opportunity repeats, it confirms alignment. When patterns persist, they invite awareness. And awareness is where transformation begins. The law of attraction is not a single dramatic moment where everything shifts overnight. It is the subtle, consistent interaction between your inner world and your lived experience. It is the way your thoughts influence your posture influences your confidence influences your decisions, and your decisions influence your reality. Life responds to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions contradict one another, life feels chaotic. When they align, life feels fluid. You no longer push against resistance. You move with intention. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this revealing within me?" That question alone changes everything, because it shifts you from victim to creator. And as you continue embodying this role of creator, life becomes less frightening and more fascinating. Even difficulty carries meaning. Even endings carry redirection. Even uncertainty carries potential. Visualization deepens here. It is no longer merely imagining possessions or achievements. It becomes envisioning the quality of life you choose to live, the calm mornings, the meaningful conversations, the purposeful work, the steady health, the balanced rhythm. You see it clearly. You feel it fully. And in feeling it, you signal readiness. The subconscious accepts the signal. It begins scanning for alignment. It highlights ideas. It strengthens intuition. It nudges behavior toward opportunity. What once felt coincidental now feels interconnected. Doors open because you notice them. Conversations shift because you speak differently. Risks feel manageable because your identity has stabilized. Life begins to collaborate with you, not because the world changed overnight, but because you did. The power and life are not opposing forces. They are a continuous exchange. You project belief outward. Life reflects experience back. You refine belief. Life refines experience. The process is dynamic, alive, ongoing. There will still be seasons of growth that stretch you. There will still be moments where doubt whispers. But even doubt now feels like a teacher rather than a threat. You observe it. You question it. You gently replace it. You understand that growth is not about eliminating all negativity. It is about returning to alignment faster each time you drift. And each return strengthens you. Life starts to feel less like something you must survive and more like something you are consciously designing. You design through emotion. You design through focus. You design through identity. The small daily choices matter more than dramatic declarations. The quiet gratitude before sleep. The brief visualization before action. The conscious breath before response. These subtle practices compound over time, shaping a life that reflects intention rather than accident. There is a certain calm that emerges when you trust this process. A calm that does not depend on perfection. A calm rooted in participation. You are participating in your own becoming. And life, in all its complexity and unpredictability, becomes less intimidating because you recognize your influence within it. You are not here merely to endure circumstances. You are here to shape experience through awareness. The power you discovered within yourself now extends into every ordinary moment. The way you walk into a room, the way you speak your goals aloud, the way you respond to setbacks, the way you celebrate progress. Life responds quietly, steadily, faithfully. Not always instantly, but consistently. And as you stand within this understanding, you feel something settle deep inside. Not urgency, not pressure, but clarity. You are both the artist and the canvas, both the signal and the receiver, both the dreamer and the builder. Life is no longer separate from your power. It is the living expression of it. So you move forward not trying to control every outcome, but choosing the frequency you carry into each moment. You choose trust over fear, gratitude over scarcity, vision over limitation. And in that steady rhythm between intention and experience, between imagination and manifestation, life unfolds with a quiet responsiveness that feels almost sacred, as if it has been waiting all along for you to recognize your role within it. And now that you have, it meets you with possibility, moment after moment, in a partnership that feels natural, expansive, and deeply alive. From that sacred partnership between you and life, where every breath feels intentional and every moment feels responsive, a final awareness gently settles in, not as an ending, but as a deep exhale after a long and transformative journey. You began by searching for power, imagining it as something distant, something hidden in the universe, something waiting to be unlocked. Yet through every layer of understanding, through identity, through emotion, through health, wealth, relationships, and life itself, you discovered that the force shaping your reality was never outside of you. It was always woven into your thoughts, your beliefs, your expectations, your subconscious patterns. The law of attraction is not a spell, not a wish, not a fleeting technique. It is a law of resonance. You resonate with what you consistently embody. Manifestation is not about convincing the universe to deliver. It is about aligning your inner world so completely that outer circumstances naturally reorganize around it. Visualization is not fantasy, it is rehearsal. The subconscious mind is not passive. It is the architect quietly building according to the blueprints you repeatedly impress upon it. And now, standing at this quiet horizon of awareness, something feels different. There is less desperation, less chasing, less questioning of whether you are worthy. In its place is steadiness, a calm recognition that your thoughts are seeds, your emotions are water, your beliefs are soil. What you cultivate internally determines what grows externally. You understand that setbacks are not punishments, but feedback. That delays are not denials, but refinements. That fear is not failure, but an invitation to realign. The power you sought is not dramatic or loud. It is subtle. It is consistent. It is present in the smallest daily choice. The thought you repeat, the story you tell yourself, the emotion you nurture before sleep. Your subconscious mind listens to repetition. It absorbs tone. It responds to imagery infused with feeling. When you visualize with clarity and gratitude, it accepts that vision as instruction. When you embody confidence before proof appears, it reorganizes behavior to support that confidence. When you feel abundance before money arrives, you begin making decisions from sufficiency rather than scarcity. And over time, life shifts. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. You became intentional. You became aware. You became aligned. This journey was never about controlling every detail of existence. It was about mastering your inner state. It was about recognizing that while circumstances may vary, your response is creative. Your focus is powerful. Your belief is magnetic. So as you step forward from this moment, you do not carry pressure. You carry clarity. You do not carry urgency. You carry intention. You understand that each day is an opportunity to tune your frequency through gratitude, through visualization, through conscious thought, through emotional discipline. The future is not something that happens to you. It is something that responds to you. And that response is continuous, quiet, faithful. You are both the dreamer and the designer, the observer and the creator, the signal and the receiver. Life reflects who you are being more than what you are asking for. So choose who you are carefully. Choose thoughts that expand. Choose beliefs that strengthen. Choose emotions that elevate. Because the power is not waiting. It is already active. It is already responding. It is already shaping experiences based on what you consistently hold within. Let that realization settle. Let it ground you. Let it inspire steady, deliberate action. You are not separate from the force that moves galaxies and grows forests and orchestrates seasons. That same intelligence flows through your awareness, through your imagination, through your subconscious patterns. When you align with it, life feels less like a struggle and more like a collaboration. And in that collaboration, there is peace. Not because every desire has instantly manifested, but because you now trust the process. You trust your influence. You trust the quiet law of resonance that never fails to respond. So carry this understanding gently. Practice it daily. Refine it patiently. Live it boldly. And if this journey awakens something within you, if these insights resonated with your desire for growth and alignment, then take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Cliff Note Chronicles for upcoming audiobook summaries on the law of attraction and beyond, because the exploration of power, manifestation, and the limitless potential within you has only just begun.